Well, at least it's a morning in California, but I just want to welcome you to Business Process Wither Automation. This is a repeated presentation because we want to make sure that we share our experience at different conferences so people can learn and decide for themselves if this is for you or not. Next slide, please. Okay, so our agenda is introductions, business process wither overview, solution, business process wither configuration steps and security, and we'll finish up with tips and lessons learned. If we have enough time, we might have Q&A involved, so please drop your questions in the chat and we'll monitor that. Next. Okay, so meet our team. I'll introduce Jessica Mance, PRMC. She's the managing director. And Jessica and I have worked on multiple projects at different organizations I worked at. And my name is Yulia Ivanova, and I've been with Kaiser Permanente for the last 8 years as a senior business analyst for grants and project costing, and our contact emails are available to you. So if you have any questions or any kind of follow-up, you can always email us. Next slide. All right. So PeopleSoft Business Process Wither provides a framework that allows processes such as batch programs to be defined and executed either in parallel or in sequence as part of the business process. So in this particular case, we will discuss Kaiser Permanente experience rolling out business process wither for billing processes. Next. Okay, so just a little bit about Kaiser. We have multiple markets in within U.S. and all of them for grants use Oracle, and so it's kind of a unified system used for us. Next, please. You know what? I'll skip that slide for the sake of I apologize. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is kind of rusty. But so at Kaiser Permanente, the stats that you see are for 2022. We haven't had a 23 approved yet, so you don't see them. But what we do have is almost 350 million in grant funding, and that includes federal, other external funded research, as well as Kaiser Permanente internal funding. Okay, we have 2,000 studies underway, and 30% of them are clinical studies, and then 70% are other. We have 180 full-time research leaders and almost 2,000 research support staff conducting those studies. And then we have multiple articles published. And that's pretty much it. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about our Oracle system. So we called internally OneLink. So we have almost 250 users and 900,000 jobs running monthly. I'll skip the rest. Go into the next slide, please. Okay, so this shows the modules that we currently employ. So there's definitely e-procurement, purchasing, inventory, cost management, e-supplier portal, service procurement, accounts payable, e-settlement, travel and expense, sourcing, supply contract management. Then we have the assets and lease suite that includes a use of project costing for that and commitment control. We also have, treasury, general ledger, of course, As far as grants suite is concerned, we have grants, customer contracts, AR, billing, project costing, and that's pretty much what you see in one link. Next, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of SpearMC before we continue with the presentation. So SpearMC is a proud Oracle partner. We specialize in PeopleSoft and Oracle technologies. We are SOC 2 certified and also very proud to be recognized by Gartner. So SpearMC is the sole featured PeopleSoft vendor in the latest Gartner Market Guide for Oracle Professional Services. So in this slide, we're just trying to represent our involvement with Oracle and how regularly and how much we are working closely with Oracle to help them support their customers and partner together and provide our customer feedback to them so that they can hear about what our customers are doing, what our customers are saying. So for each of these teams, we are regularly meeting with them and are very proud and of our relationship with Oracle. In terms of Apps Unlimited on top, I'll mention this in sessions later today too. We do a lot of demos for requests by Oracle, and for the grants area, I typically do those demos. So if you ever need a demo for grants management, always happy to do that. Okay, so let me just move on to our products and services. So SpearMC is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. We really did start with training as our foundation. So in the upper right-hand corner, we still continue to do lots and lots of PeopleSoft training. So we have a variety of different ways that you can consume training. We have our own all-access learning pass, so that's a subscription model to all of our training material. We do live private trainings as well as public trainings. I have a slide to give you a QR code so you can access on our website the upcoming public trainings. And we are also the sole PeopleSoft reseller for Oracle Guided Learning. Hopefully you've had a chance to see some demos, hear about Oracle Guided Learning. If not, please take advantage of it this conference. There's several sessions, and I can point those out later in the presentation as well. We're super excited about Oracle Guided Learning. We're also an Oracle University reseller as well. So we do lots and lots of training, but also your traditional services for consulting, and it's across the pillars. So financials, HCM, campus solution, we can help with expanding modules. If you need help on the managed services side, we can provide a variety of levels of services there, from just system administration to providing technical and functional support infrastructure. And then if you're looking to move to the cloud, we can help with OCI migration. In the emerging technology side, we can help with chatbots, creating your roadmaps, as well as open search dashboards. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, proprietary products, we do have quite a few of our own PeopleSoft specific solutions. Just point out in the grants area, we have a labor cost distribution and effort reporting solution for PeopleSoft. So let us know if you need any more information in any of those areas. Okay, here, as I mentioned, if you want to take a look at our latest training classes that are upcoming, here's a QR code, but you can also easily find it directly on our website. All right, so as Yulia mentioned before, PeopleSoft Business Process Weaver provides a framework that allows processes or tasks such as batch programs to be defined and executed in parallel or in sequence as a part of a business process. I do want to point out that if you're really excited about this topic, there is another session later today put on by Oracle talking and giving an additional use case for Business Process Weaver. And then also on the PeopleSoft information portal, we have the innovators, and there is an example innovator, State of Connecticut, that is talking about their rollout of Business Process Weaver. So some more resources for you to get additional information. But you might be wondering at this point in the presentation, that description, kind of sounds like batch scheduling, batch processing. What's the big deal with Business Process Weaver? What's the benefit? What makes it different? So I'm hoping to provide more clarity over the next few slides here on what makes it unique and how it can benefit your organization. So I want to go back to the Kaiser Permanente example of using Business Process Weaver for billing. So Spear MC has been very fortunate and honored to work with Kaiser Permanente with various projects, including their billing automation project. And one of the specific requirements that came out of that project, so we had a lot of requirements and wish lists for improving the business process and further automating it. And one request was from the billers that I don't want to have to manually run the billing interface process. Okay, so that was a specific ask. And let me just walk through, I think this is a flow chart from PeopleBooks. For grant billing, it could also be non-grant billing coming out of customer contracts. The billing process starts at the top here with number 1, the contracts billing interface, CA, BI, INTFC. You'll see this process throughout the rest of this presentation. This process, run out of contracts, initiates and sends billing information over to the billing module. That billing information could be looking to project costing, project resource to get that data. It could also be looking on the contract itself to pick up those milestone-based events. Okay, so this process you run, which then puts data into the billing interface table. And at that point, you will run the billing interface process, which will go through and look at your billing data and determine how do I group and segregate information, what type of invoice do I get, should be created as I create that invoice. So you see we have kind of a branching here. It may create a temporary invoice and be put on the billing worksheet, or based on the settings, it may go right to a real bill that's ready to be finalized. For grants, oftentimes, and especially for as incurred billing, it will go to the billing worksheets, and that's really when a lot of the review in billing happens. We'll look at those pro forma invoices, make sure all of the data looks correct before we mark it as approved and to be ready to be finalized. Okay, so once it's approved, then you can go through a series of additional batch processes. These often either are run together or they're run in batch. These 5, 6, and 7, so finalization, runs some edits, marks the invoice as finalized, so you can't make any additional changes. There are a couple more integration points not in this flow. It's going to create accounting, it could create accounting entries to send to the GL. We'll also send to AR. And then these batch processes complete the integration by sending data back into contracts to let the contracts module know what's been billed or sometimes adjusted. And then this final one, step 7, takes that billing information and updates the project resource table. So really the pain point that the billers highlighted and were asking is, hey, when I run this contracts to billing interface, I need to wait for it to be done, and then I go into the process monitor and I pick the interface, I find the interface ID, and then I manually run this billing interface. There's no additional logic or thinking. It's always done the same way. We get the interface number and we run it. So true, it's a true statement that technically all of this stuff could be scheduled to run in batch on a nightly basis or more frequently. However, for grants specifically, and that could be other industries, the timing and what you actually want to run the billing for in step one varies. Even for different business units in Kaiser, for example, they have slightly different month-end close schedules. So project costing might close slightly different days, and therefore the billers will not initiate this process until the period is closed. So the actual timing of when step one is run for grants is often difficult to just put in the nightly batch process. They want to manually kick that off when they're ready. But this part, step two, there's not a lot of value add of having the actual end user do that. It just needs to be done. And that was the ask. Can you just please kick that off automatically and not have to make me do that step? Okay, I'm going to move on and talk about something else you might be wondering about. Well, hey, you just talked about kicking off contracts to billing and running the billing interface. What about streamlined billing? Doesn't that do that for you? So the streamlined billing functionality, we did also roll out for Kaiser Permanente as a part of the project for specific use cases. And it's really for fixed amount invoicing where they weren't even planning to send that invoice to the customer. They simply needed to send that invoice to accounts receivable so that they could apply a payment. But this streamlined billing functionality does allow you to automate that billing interface process. So once you kick off contracts to billing, it would automatically then, as the next step, kick off this job, CABIDIR, or like for direct invoice 1, or it could be 2, depending on your settings. And notice as a part of this job here, it goes through all of those processes. So we are processing the billing interface, we are running edits, we are printing, we are sending accounting entries to the GL, loading to AR. It does it all for you right within that job. However, to utilize this functionality, it is required on your billing plan to have the pre-approved checkbox checked, meaning if I go back to this flow chart here, it is going to bypass the billing worksheet. It's not going to create a temporary invoice. It's going to go this path and have the invoice already ready to go. Also, it makes it more difficult to make changes. You can make changes, but more difficult. So that needs to be checked. Direct invoice needs to be checked. And by the way, it needs a few special fields in the bill by identifier to make this work. So that's great if you don't want to create a temporary invoice, which for grants, at least for Kaiser, at this point, the majority of their invoices do need to first be a temp invoice and reviewed and approved before it can be finalized. So we really couldn't use this streamlined billing for the majority of the billing, but we did roll it out for a few different use cases. Okay, so we talked about why we couldn't use that. It bypasses the billing worksheet. It also, if you use streamlined billing, bypasses the invoice approval workflow, which Kaiser uses for certain bill types. So yes, so only certain cases can we really use that streamlined billing. So the solution that we came up with to accommodate that request of the users to automate the billing interface was to create 2 process weaver definitions that essentially link together two processes, contracts to billing, and then the billing interface. So the first business process weaver definition, and I'm going to be showing you screenshots of the setup, and then we'll circle back at the end to also show you a little video how it looks when it runs. So the first business process weaver was for the as incurred type billing. That is a separate run control than amount-based billing. So we do have a separate definition for that. We were able to use all delivered functionality in order to make that work. And then since many of the grants invoices are amount-based, and that is a separate run control, we created a separate business process weaver definition for amount-based billing. This one did require a small enhancement, which we will talk about as we go. All right, so once the business process weaver definitions are configured and set up, then the user navigates as part of this solution to the business process weaver run control that looks like this, essentially stringing together those two processes. So the first step being contracts to billing, the next step being the billing interface. You can see these are the two business process definitions that we have set up. When a user is creating a run control for the first time, there is a step here. You see the security link. The user does need to click on that and click copy from definition. So we have this security default set up on the business process definition. Click copy from definition to bring in the security, and this can either be role-based or specific users. So for Kaiser, we rolled it out in this example with a particular role, which is the biller role. And then as you're setting up your run control, something important to note is in order to link these together, the thread run control here needs to match the run control ID for the process that you're running. So if you've run billing before, this run control is very familiar to you. That step doesn't go away, and that step also needs to be updated on a monthly basis, or how often you're running your billing. That step we still need to do to be able to change the data that you're picking up. But through the business process weaver, we're linking together these steps to automatically pass that interface ID and process the interface automatically. So for, okay, we have two different screenshots here. Sorry if it's a little small, but the slides are posted online, so you can reference those later. Here is the as incurred example down here. We have amount-based up here, and notice through clicking in the setup, we can identify the predecessor. That is what basically visually, systematically creates the order, and also visually you can see it here. And if you come over to the right, we have what's called an event handler, and it will allow that communication from contracts to billing to the billing interface. For as incurred, we were able to use just the delivered event handlers. As I mentioned, we did need to make a small customization for the amount-based, and we'll show you why. So you'll see the prefix KP underscore here, just a small app class that needed to be created. All right, so when the user went through, they set up their run control, click process, and now here visually, it's kind of neat. It changes colors and will tell you the status of where each of those processes are at. So initially, starting in started with this kind of yellowish color. Once that's complete, it updates the color and status and automatically goes on to the next process, which is the billing interface. Because in this example, the invoices create temporary invoices, it doesn't get updated to a complete status as delivered. It goes to paused after because essentially the billing is stopping at that moment and it's requiring you to approve those invoices. Okay, so we have graphically seeing the status of those processes being run in sequence or in parallel. If you navigate to the process monitor, or when you navigate to the process monitor, unlike the streamlined billing where it actually, you could visually see, oh, I kicked off this special batch job, I ran streamlined billing, you actually can't really see, just looking at it, that you kicked it off through Business Process Weaver. It looks the same, therefore troubleshooting is also very similar. You can go into the details and look at the message log. Okay, versus this is just drilling down into the billing interface. I can see, okay, the bill header created 1, bill lines 2. So all that looks, the same as what users were used to before. You can still go back into that business process instance, which I showed you before with the graphics, by navigating to this page, clicking on our process instance number. So you can still get back to it even, so kind of 2 different views, 2 different options. You have the regular process monitor or business process instance, which, there's only 2 processes in this example, but there could be a lot more. And then from this graphic too, you can directly drill down into the details. I can still get to my message log or my process log by clicking on either of these icons. Okay, so I clicked on that same process and I get my same information. 1 bill header created 2 lines, just like I saw on the process monitor. Okay, so that was the solution. I wanted to walk through how you go about setting up Business Process Weaver and the security in just a little bit more detail. So the 3 steps that you should consider as you go through this is the application class registry, the business process entry point, and business process task registry setup. Starting at the application class registry, this page is divided into system-defined or delivered app classes. And then at the bottom section would be if you needed to create any special event handlers, your application classes would be entered here. So I mentioned amount-based. We needed to create our own, and therefore we did have the extra step to add it here. For as incurred, you can see that was already predefined. It's already listed in the system defined section, so that was good to go. Okay, so any event handler or task used in the business process needs to be registered on this page. The next step to consider is the business process entry point registration page. And this is applicable if you are initiating a business process from a transaction page outside of the Business Process Weaver components. So I showed you earlier the users would go into the Business Process Weaver run control page. We were not, so therefore in our solution, we did not have to do anything special here because we were using that business process delivered run control. But depending on what you're doing, you may need to do this step. Okay, and then lastly, the business process task registry page, all of the tasks, essentially those processes that are going to be incorporated into the business process need to be registered here. And once again, we have this divided into delivered tasks as well as user defined. For Kaiser, we already have both the as incurred billing task as well as the fixed amount. So once again, in their solution, nothing extra was required to be entered into the user defined area, which was nice. All right, so then you need to set up the business process definition configuration, essentially linking together your steps, defining your predecessors here. So to define that predecessor, you click this select button, and then you can identify which is the predecessor task. We have to enter that security, right? So that can default into the run control. Okay, so this is what it looked like or looks like for as incurred. And I kind of showed you this earlier. The security for Kaiser is set up at the role level. Similarly, for fixed amount, we are linking together the task for fixed amount billing with the billing interface. But here's where we did have to do a small technical piece of work here, creating this event handler so that we can grab that interface ID from here and pass it along to the billing interface. Okay, similarly, have the same security of the role for a grant spiller. All right, and I'm going to pass it back over to Yulia, if your voice is still there, for talking about the tips and lessons learned.
Yes, thank you. I'm good to go. Thank you, Jessica. So here's some lessons learned that we've gathered through this process. So as Jessica mentioned and several times that for fixed amount billing, the business process with it did not pass the interface ID. So upon looking into the code closely, we realized that the delivered event handler was hard-coded for as incurred. So that was the minor code change that we had to introduce into this process. In addition, we had to create, and I think the next slide talks about that. In addition, we had to create the event handler for the fixed fee billing, and that's how we dealt with that. So we had a temp workaround, set run control to business unit, and then long-term solution was to create a copy of delivered event handler, focusing on fixed fee billing, and then the configuration step would take place. Oh, I also want to mention that we did contact Oracle to make sure that in the next image we would fix that. So hopefully you guys will benefit our discovery. Next, please. All right. So the users can see the run controls. So what that meant was that so each biller had to create their own run control. But then when a user would navigate to the business process with their run control, they would see everybody else's run control created, right? It was a one-time setup as far as the run control is concerned, but they could still see everybody else's. So that's when we use the user ID search function that allowed users to just zoom in on their own or get their search results for their own run control. And so that way they wouldn't pick up anybody else's. Okay. So just a couple of more items. So allow time to define, update security for billers and see how that works for you based on your security structure. Allow time for training and learning curve. That felt like the page looked more technical than the users were used to. So so we took a little bit of hand holding to make it work, for them to feel comfortable. Process time is not necessarily faster. That was something that we noticed. It was not necessarily faster, but it was less clicks for the users. And then, as Jessica mentioned earlier, troubleshooting is still the same steps, right? So while you have this system-delivered process to run two billing processes subsequently, you still troubleshoot them one by one, depending where the issue occurred. Back to you, Jessica.
Okay. All right. So just to kind of encourage you and give you a sense of how easy this was to set up, I set this up in one of our demo environments, image 49, for as incurred, granted, fixed amount, unless you want to run it at the business unit level. You would need some code to automatically pass the interface ID. So I set up this business process definition, took me 2 minutes and 6 seconds. And then I created a little video to show you what it looks like for the end user for kicking this off. So I'm just going to play this. Starting at the Grants homepage, I'm going to go over and navigate into background processes, business process weaver, business process run control, and I'm going to create a new run control so you can see how this works. Business process type would be a user in this case, and I have to pick my business process ID, weaver ID, which I had just showed you a screenshot for. Identify a business process run control, and then as you can see, it defaults in the process thread and steps. And security, in this case, I just defaulted my user ID. So notice it brought in the event handlers. That, I'm going to pause it for a minute here. That little icon here, I think it's an eye. When you click on it, it's just indicating that you don't have to set up, you don't have to set up a run control, even though you see an icon there. You don't have to set it up. It will be created dynamically for you. I will just mention here for fixed amount, because it doesn't, the event handler is only pointing to as incurred. The workaround that we did was to create a run control and just put in the business unit. So instead of passing along the interface ID, it did kick off the process, and it kicked off the process for the whole business unit. However, many of the billers were not comfortable with that. They did not want to touch anybody else's bills. So some of them did say, I'm going to wait until we get the fix to pass along just the business interface ID to not cause any confusion. But every organization is a little bit different. So you do just want to point out for fixed amount, you can still use it, and you can just enter in like a business unit level information in the run control. Okay, so I think at this point I'm ready to save. So graphically below, it's showing you the sequence. As I mentioned, we can identify and build out a run control, but we don't have to in this case for as incurred. You can either add a new run control right now on the fly, or if you have an existing one you want to use. So here's the as incurred. I had a pre-established as incurred run control. I just selected that. And now I'm ready to kick it off. Okay. So as we saw earlier in the run controls, visually and through colors, it's telling you where it's at. And I did not shorten this video. I didn't trim it at all. So I did just let it run and record to show you how this works with just right out of the box. So the first process completed, changed to green, and I'm just waiting now for the interface process, which is started but not complete, to finish. Okay, so we go to that status of paused after. If I wanted to, I can drill into the message log to get additional information that we saw before. So I have accounting rules that were found. And if I scroll back up to the top, I can see that 2 rows were inserted for the first step with interface ID 215. And if I navigate over to the process monitor, once again, just highlighting the fact at a quick glance, you don't necessarily tell. You just see the 2 processes running together. And if I drill into the details, it's going to give me that same message log information that interface ID 215 was inserted into the billing interface, and then the billing interface was kicked off and created 1 invoice with 2 lines. Right, so that was the little demo from a demo database. Just wanted to highlight here, in a way it operates a little bit like a job. So this business Weaver business process instance, you notice it's ending in 614. We didn't see that on the process monitor. What you do see is the step thread process instance. So notice contracts to billing ends in 216, and that's what we saw on the process monitor. And then we have kind of this overarching process instance, kind of like a job. And just wanted to go back to that point of the jobs themselves. You know, they're going to run the same time duration basically as they ran before. It is less clicks for the users. It also is faster. If you just even look at this example, because it just automatically kicks off the billing interface, notice that step took 20 seconds, right? After the billing interface completed, I went directly and ran that, versus here I manually ran this to make sure I had data that was ready to be picked up. So it ran, I had to go get the interface ID, I had to navigate to the billing interface, I had to kick it off. So clearly there is a time savings overall because it's more efficient. But we wanted to be clear that, you know, it's not speeding up necessarily each process. Okay, I think we are through our slides, and we can take Q&A.
Jessica, we do have a couple of questions in the chat. So let me read the questions. So one is, how is it different from batch process and running the processes as part of a PS job?
Yeah, so I was trying to differentiate this at the beginning of the presentation. And perhaps what I didn't highlight is in your batch processing, you have a standard business, and actually let me go back to some slides here. Okay. Let me go back to the flow here. All right. So in your nightly batch, you establish your run controls, right? So those run controls may be static for the whole month, and then maybe you have a process either manually or systematic to update the run control values. Certainly for billing, it's important to do that. The dates need to change because best practice is billers are running billing up through a certain date, through a month-end close date, typically. There's other times where, maybe you're running the letter of credit on a weekly basis, but same thing, you still need to have a cutoff date of what transactions you want to pick up. So this allows the user, whenever they want, to initiate that billing for their set of data. Okay, so the billers often have a set of contracts, type of billing that they're responsible for. They can run their billing whenever they're ready with their run control and have it continue through the process. In this case, we're just running one. It certainly could be more. But that's, to me, the real difference is it's a more of a smaller batch of data that the users are controlling the data being picked up versus the batch job that's pretty much predefined, and often it's not being touched until the end of the month, for example. Hopefully that made it clear.
Thank you. Let's jump to the next question from Sarasota Memorial Healthcare. I've read about business process wither, but struggled with figuring out what use cases it is appropriate for. It seems to be batch process, which are dependent on particular data for a run control that is only known by the execution of a prior batch process or transaction entry, ? Otherwise, you could use job sets and preset run controls to link multiple processes / jobs.
Yeah, Jeff, I think you're onto it. It's where we want to put it into the user's control of limiting down their data that they're processing. So taking a subset of data and then continuing on with this batch processing just for that data. So not picking up anything else out there that could potentially be ready for processing. It's just their data that they want to process. So hopefully you can see how billing is a really nice candidate for this, because it did automate that step that, like I said, doesn't add a lot of value. There's no thinking about what it is that you want to enter on in that run control. It just needs to be done. And I think in the afternoon sessions today, I believe it's an asset management use case. Let's see, where did I put that? Yes, month-end accounting period for asset management. So yeah, there could be other month-end close use cases beyond asset management where you're doing a series of steps, but for a limited number of data and transactions. Okay, I think those were the two. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Any other questions on Business Process Weaver or Streamline Billing? Awesome. Wow. We ended so early. I have time to point out, let's see, please remember to fill out, there's a survey. Okay, let me go here. Remember to rate your sessions. And then we have a ton of SpearMC both sessions as well as demos that are coming up today and the rest of this week. So hope you have a chance to check those out. And then in terms of our training calendar, here's just some of the upcoming training sessions, which you can also see on our website. Okay, well, I do see one more chat. Okay, thank you for joining. Cool. Awesome, guys. Well, once again, thank you so much for attending the session. And if there's anything else that, any questions that come up after the fact, please feel free to reach out to both me and Yulia.
And on behalf of Quest, thank you all for attending. Thank you to our speakers.